Hello, everyone. Thank you. If you are listening to this, thank you so much for being here and being here with us as this new idea, new venture takes place with myself, David Hall, and my friend, Connor. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the introduction there, Dave.
I didn't say your last name.
My last name is Moon, Connor Moon. So,
do you know where that comes from? Your last name?
So there's some debate, okay? I don't know how true this is, so just bear with me, but apparently there was some kind of Viking like clan, right? Like my dad told me one time, and if my dad's listening, then I kind of believe it. I kind of don't. Just gonna be honest, but
it could sound cool.
They would fight at night, and like they would use that as cover, and so they were called like the Moon Warriors or something, and so we're like descendants.
That's a really cool.
I've never actually traced it myself, but
I mean, if it was me, I would just leave it at that. I'd be
right?
No, that's exactly who my ancestors were.
My ancestors
freaking Moon Warriors.
Yeah, it's Spec Ops Vikings. Yeah, like
predated night vision.
Oh yeah.
Dang.
They used lunar.
I can't imagine my last name has anywhere near as much gravitas. I mean, he probably just owned some big house. And they were like, wow. Look at that. He's got a really big hall in there. Something boring like that. Yeah. He owned the local hall. I don't know. There's nothing that can be exciting come from that, really.
Yeah. It could be interesting, though, to track the lineage of the name.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they change, Sometimes last names change. Do they?
I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I know that Christy at Midway thinks we're related because her maiden name is Hall, so she calls us fam. I'm family to her now.
Yeah, and you're from England and you're not in England, so that would be a kind of a
I mean, there's a pretty good chance that
you think so?
We're related. I mean, I guess. I mean, it was English people who came over here and settled, true. So there's a chance, I suppose, that one of my family members made it over at some point in the last 250 years. How old's America?
1776.
So what's that? Yeah, like 250 years, roughly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maths. Yeah, 250 years.
Yep.
Wait, is 2026 250 years of America? Hang on, I've got to get the calculator out.
That makes sense, if it is.
Hang on. Are you doing the maths?
I'm doing the maths.
Okay. Or was it 2016?
2026.
2026. That, coincidentally, is also the World Cup, which is being held in America. For football, soccer, yeah. So it's gonna be a party.
That's gonna be so cool.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to this podcast. We are calling it. What are we calling it again?
The Standard Paradox.
The Standard Paradox. We spent maybe an hour trying to come up with a name before this.
A fitting name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we could have just come up with some random name. But
we didn't want to, improperly brand it. We wanted something that with meaning, yeah.
Exactly. And you did a really good job of explaining where we're coming from, angle-wise. Do you want to try and explain to people listening where we're kind of coming from with the name Standard Paradox?
Yeah. So what I was thinking was, we're going to have conversations throughout the course of this podcast with other individuals that have unique stories and unique perspectives on life. But as anyone who's ever grown up with maybe a projected expectation or something that some society or their cultures told them that they should live up to or be, you have that expectation for your life on one side, and then on the other side you have like a failed expectation. And so you can sometimes get into the mindset that it's one or the other. You either live up to the society's expectations or you fail, and it's hard to exist in between. And sometimes it can feel like a paradox. Either you can navigate it well and you can get to the end and have all those expectations and meet all those projected expectations, but the reality is we never really find ourselves there.
Mm-hmm.
We always get close and then go back to the failing side of things, or failed and then somehow get ourselves back up, pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and get back going or something like that. And so it feels oftentimes like a paradox. And for you and me, Dave, as believers, as Christians, we live in a similar paradox of people often think, oh, you're perfect. Jesus was perfect. You must be perfect. And there's a very real different reality for us. We're not perfect. We don't try to meet those expectations, but people, even fellow Christians, can project those on us.
Absolutely.
So you're either perfect or you're broken, but the reality is we're somewhere in that middle area, which feels oftentimes like a paradox.
Yeah.
And it's not a theory. It's a daily thing that we go through. Yep. We meet people and we have conversations about this all the time. And it feels like a standard everyday kind of paradox that you live in, and we have to navigate, and other people can contribute to that conversation. So.
Hey, that was a great description.
Thanks, man.
That was awesome. Round of applause.
I need to put that on the track, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. The applause sign lights up. But it's true, man, though. I mean, like you said, I mean, it's even within the church and within the Christian faith, you can experience that, expectations that are put on you from whatever age. I mean, I'm sure there's people of every single age, background, whatever, who feel like they've got some expectations on them that they might not necessarily be able to meet. Mm-hmm. But I mean, also it comes from the outside looking in, right? I mean, it's a tale as old as time where people will judge you differently if you have explicitly given yourself rules to follow,
Yeah.
Because if someone looks at you and they say, well, you're not meeting any of this criteria that you've said you're going to try and meet, then naturally they're going to judge you for that. So it's tough. I mean, I'm obviously not trying to make everyone feel sorry for Christians, because that's not what the point of this is about. But it can be tough.
And there's projected expectations in other religions too. Like I think of like Buddhists who have to, strive towards enlightenment and
be at peace.
And
everything.
So, and there's other, I'm sure religions. I'm not well versed on them, but like,
I mean,
can't
even
just be exclusive to Christianity.
Yeah, even the sort of like, I believe it's Hinduism where they believe in reincarnation. If my year 8 RS studies have got anything to if they've taught me anything, I think that because they're the guys who believe in karma, right?
Yeah.
So any good action you make gives you better karma. Every bad action you make gives you worse karma. And then dependent on when your life comes to an end, how good your karma was or how bad your karma was, you'll be reincarnated appropriately.
Yeah.
And I believe the goal is that the way I had it described to me was that if you're a human being who dies with bad karma, you might come back as, say, a dung beetle.
Yeah.
But then if you somehow get good karma as a dung beetle, I don't know how that works.
You could move up from there.
Yeah, you can then maybe become a human again. And if you finish human life as someone with good karma, you might become like a priest, and further on until you reach enlightenment.
Yeah.
Sounds exhausting, but
because you have that projected expectation, you're living in a paradox every day.
Exactly. That's a great way of describing it, man.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of it's an idea I had where as someone who's relatively new to Christian faith, it's hard for me to find people my own age, especially before I started coming to church regularly out here in Georgia. It's really tough to find people your own age who are people of faith,
Yeah.
It's getting less and less, and it's definitely not mainstream anymore. You don't really hear it talked about on TV, even in TV shows, in movies. It's one of the biggest reasons why I love The Chosen so much. Shout out. It's mainstream Christian.
It's highly produced. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually
good.
like, sharing a good message, and it's something that I actively want to watch because, it doesn't suck.
It's not cheesy. It's not a cheesy Christian
exactly.
film.
It's not, I mean, no disrespect to like VeggieTales or whatever, but, like... Yeah, you get
on
what
a
I
different
mean.
level than VeggieTales.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like I said, highly produced, really well acted, good TV show that I've recommended to people, and I know that people who aren't even Christians have been watching it because it's a good show.
It lives up to the hype.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I wanted to be able to try and hopefully be a drop in the water of the culture that we live in, where people who are young, like myself and yourself, can maybe be something to people who are our own age and older and even younger, of, you know, it's not all hope is lost, you know.
Yeah.
That there are people our age still trying to follow Jesus and
Just figure things out.
exactly in a world that really pushes you away from it. And hopefully we'll be able to bring some people in who can share their own stories and share their own experiences of growing up in different ways. Maybe they weren't Christians growing up. Maybe they were. Maybe they lost their faith. Maybe they found it again. Maybe they've just been really hard Christians their whole lives, but lived in a place where no one else was. You know, I know that there's people who are missionaries who go to countries where it's illegal to be a Christian, or live in cities like I did in LA, where being a Christian, you're like maybe in like the 1% of people who live in LA that are Christians, you know, and that might be an overstatement. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get some people in, get some interesting conversations that hopefully people will want to listen to and, fingers crossed, take something from.
Yeah. And maybe even engage with, you know, because
absolutely,
you know, they have perspectives and things. So
yeah, I'd love that. I'd love for, you know, if anyone is listening to this and they have questions, stories, whatever it is, just write it wherever it is. I don't know where we're going to put this yet, but somewhere.
Yeah, you can send an email, or you could,
absolutely
do a Facebook page.
Yeah,
or whatever.
we'll find something to. We're kind of just exploring where we are right now, but in regards to today, first of all, the Braves play tonight, Game 1.
Yeah, today is the 26th.
I think you're right. 26th.
Look at me being an
Arsenal
adult
are playing right now. They just kicked off, playing Leeds in the Carabao Cup. So, relatively important game, but not massively. It's another cup competition. And then the Braves play tonight, Game 1, World Series. Big game.
Big game. Big series for the Braves.
Oh, yeah.
So
massively.
It'll be interesting. It's weird, Dave, here being in the outskirts of Atlanta, and people just go crazy for, like, Atlanta makes it to something big. Dude, it's just, you're like, oh, you were a Braves fan. Okay. I didn't know that. You know, like, all of them just start coming out, like, to support. It's really cool. It's weird, but it's cool.
It is cool. You know, there's definitely the skeptics out there who will say that you only become a Braves fan when you make it to the World Series, but the more the merrier, you know.
That's right, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, specifically for today, because, you know, we don't have a third person here. It's just the two of us. What I'd kind of like to do is kind of just tell a little bit about ourselves. I don't really even massively know your story. I don't know how much you want to share.
Yeah.
But for me, I'll definitely share away, tell my story. But if you're cool with it,
I'd love to share.
Yeah, man. I mean, you just like let people know about what our experiences were growing up, maybe our experiences with faith, where we've struggled, where things have been great, whatever you want to share, man.
Yeah.
Take it away.
I'm all for that. Yeah. So for those of you that are listening, my name is Connor Moon, and I am 22 years old, doing this podcast with Dave, and I'm actually a pastor, kind of. I'm an online pastor, so it's a different kind of pastor.
Have you been ordained yet?
I haven't been ordained. I've been commissioned.
Okay. What's
so
the difference?
Kind of two steps. So commissioned is like a license, a legal status as a minister, and then ordained is like church by church basis, like the church affirms your ministry progress. And
nice.
So, yeah. There's more theological terms, but we won't get into that. So I'm working at church, been doing that for a couple of years. And but I haven't always lived in this Carrollton area, West Georgia area. I grew up in East Alabama. And so for me, my story begins pretty much in brokenness, if you will. Like, I don't want to use too many buzzwords, but
hey, man, we're a Christian podcast. We
right.
love buzzwords.
That's right. You got to throw a few in there. So like my parents weren't always the greatest. They were great parents, and they provided, and we're here, we're alive, and we didn't go to DFACS or anything. But from what I gathered, it wasn't on the best terms that they got together, and so I'm the middle child. So I have two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, and so when we were growing up, it was more of we weren't rich, we didn't have money, we were poor, we went to church every once in a while, and I found community. I found like my people group on video games. That's when like Xbox Live was coming up and getting big, and PlayStation Network was free, and so you could hop on and play with your friends who had PlayStation and stuff. And so
what were you playing?
Dude, Black Ops 1.
Oh, what a game.
Dude, that was...
What a game.
So we were coming up on Xbox Live and like all that stuff after Modern Warfare 2 into Modern Warfare 3 and then Black Ops and all that. So Black Ops 1 is the OG for me. It's
nice.
So much fun. Zombies, all that kind of stuff.
So I'm a couple years older than you. I'm 26. So Modern Warfare 2 was my first.
Yes. So you're that crew. Yeah. Which was a great game still.
Oh
my gosh. So good. And so much fun to just come home, get your schoolwork done, and then jump online. And so
you did your schoolwork. I did not.
Sometimes I would not always. Zombies were just waiting on me, man. They were just ready. And so,
got to get your priorities straight.
Exactly. And I'm thankful for it because, that's where my crew was. That's where my people were. And so we'd go home, play video games. We'd come to school talking about video games. My world existed online. That's kind of why I lean towards it today. And so, but being online, you build your characteristics or who you are kind of around that, things you love. And so loved being online with people, loved hearing their stories and things. And so I would build relationships with people online, and that was very valuable for me. But when I started getting into high school, I started really trying to figure out who I was, my identity, and all that, like every high schooler goes through. And so I kind of began to experiment with like physical characteristics or things that I could build. Like I loved lifting weights, loved playing football, American football, and other things. And I loved just trying to be the best I could be, because, and this is a pivotal moment for me in understanding this, but I wanted to be the best I could be because those were the people that succeeded, the ones that that realized that life is tough, but they could come out on top. Those were the people who made the money. Those were the people who had the nice homes and the good relationships and things. At least that's what I understood as success. And so as I started high school, my parents' relationships started to really dissolve, and we were, living with different people and our aunts and uncles, grandparents, things like that. We were just bouncing around, and so my parents eventually got a divorce, and it wasn't a fun time. It was chaos and hard and broken. They got a divorce when I was 15.
Okay.
I believe 14 or 15. And at the time I was living with my grandparents. And so and my brothers were living with my aunt and uncle. And so it was tough. It was weird. It was strange because we weren't there, but you were still feeling the side effects. Like we had to go help them move stuff out and things like that. So it was strange. It was weird. So I kind of just shut that stuff off, and just kind of left it be, and, just let my parents handle that. And I was going to focus on building my success, building Connor's story. And so that began for me with, like I said, physical things. Like I wanted to lift weights. And so I started really pushing, being strong, being prideful, taking care of what I needed to take care of, being a man, those kind of things, where those were the things I thought would lend to be successful or lend me a better chance of being successful. So one of the strongest kids in my class, started varsity 9th grade year, like right off the bat. So I found success in those things. But my 10th grade year, after right when it was starting, that August, I got in a car accident. My back got messed up, and I didn't really know that. It hurt, but like I didn't know it was getting worse through playing football and stuff. And so eventually at the end of the season, it got to the point where I was doing squats one day and I just collapsed. Like my back just, my muscles just spasmed, and I collapsed doing back squats and stuff. And so I realized then, okay, there's a problem. There's something going on. Go to the doctor, and they tell me I'm in the chiropractor for like 6 months for physical therapy and all that kind of stuff, and he's trying to get it fixed. And he tells me, like, hey, you can play football, you can do those things, you can lift weights. This time we're easing back into things, but he said, just be careful. Know that it's probably not the best idea. And I was like, man, like, is this really something I want to deal with the rest of my life? Do I want to have back problems and stuff, or do I want to play football? And it's not just like I'm making out to be like it's this or that. It's very clear, black and white. But for me, like that was me. I was the weightlifter. I was the football player. I was the physical. Let me just attain all these physical attributes, and that was my identity. So I wasn't just saying, is it football or is it not football? I was saying, is it everything Connor's built in the past 4 years, or is it start from scratch? And as a high schooler, it's a lot. Like your friends are playing football, your friends are lifting weights, your coach, your mentors are in that world. To leave that world is incredibly substantial. So I said, what the heck? I can't, like, I did not want to have back problems the rest of my life. So I didn't play football, lost my community that I had built there, lost my coaches that had just surrounded me in football and things. They acted like, they didn't really care and things like that. So now that I'm not playing football, and so I just lost all that I had just built over the past 4 years in football and things like that, and weightlifting. And I had to start fresh. And I started finding friends and community around church and things like that. And I loved leading discussions about principles and leadership things and stuff like that.
So you were still going to church this whole time?
Sort of. So this is kind of when I started into church. Okay. And so my family was like once a month, twice a month kind of churchgoers. Mm-hmm. And so church wasn't really a thing until this moment where I had to change kind of my direction. So I started experimenting with going to church and things like that. And I still had a weightlifting class where I couldn't lift weights. So one of the coaches just let me watch YouTube videos on his computer, which was really cool. And I got down this rabbit trail of theological stuff. And so that's where my passion for Christianity and things like that sparked, was that moment where I could spend some time in theology. So I went down that road and started getting plugged in at church. And then when I was somewhere after my sophomore year into my junior year, I got saved. It was a Wednesday night at church, and I was like, hey, this is real. There's something to this, and I want to explore it. So I gave my life to Christ and said, hey, I'm moving forward with this route. Forget everything that's happened. God's changed my identity for a reason. He's shifted my course for a reason, and I need to figure out what that is. That's and awesome.
So had you not felt that conviction until that point in your life?
Yeah, it was always an interesting thing, mm-hmm. but it wasn't of like, hey, Connor, you tried this thing of building your own identity, and one car accident threw that out the window. Mm. So what do you do when that happens over and over and over again? Like you don't have that. And so it was a moment where I realized, oh, I'm not the author of my own path. Society says this is the way to go, but what if you can't get there? What if you can't live up to those standards? What if you get a car accident and you can't be the strongest? You can't be the most passionate, the most one with most time. Like what do you do? And that's when I realized, like, those standards are cool, but they're unattainable. And there's something to this theology, this story of Christ that is, and this salvation and other things that I was reading that I guess we'll unpack later. But there's something to that that's actually fulfilling and attainable without me being the author of those things. And that's when it clicked that night. And so fast forward, I've been discipled by incredible guys that still pour into me and tell me about, their journeys and their, how they wrestle with things with Christ and things like that. So they've discipled me, got me to the point I am now as a believer. But that was kind of my story. To sum it up, it was I had built this identity in physical attributes, and that got thrown out the window really quick, and everything I had built crumbled. And then God showed me that he's the author of my life. He wants to direct me in a certain way. And if I submit and be obedient to that, let him just work through this life, I will find joy. I will find fulfillment. But not always what society says. So, yeah, that's kind of my story.
Man. That's really good. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And it's been interesting. Now I'm married and living my life. And so.
How'd you guys meet?
We met that same church. I got saved.
Oh, yeah?
When I was 15, yeah. Or 16, somewhere in there. And so we started dating and dated for like 4 years and got married. And
when did y'all get married?
We got married in 2019, January. That's a funny story. I can tell that later. But we got married really quick, and it was crazy. So
yeah,
it was fun though. But yeah, married now for 2 years.
So. Nice. When's y'all's anniversary?
January 19th.
Hey, so it's coming up.
18th.
Oh.
She's not listening. January 18th, 2019. So.
Yep. So we've all been there, man.
Yep.
We've all been there.
Yep.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
What about you, Dave? I don't think I fully heard your story either.
Yeah, I mean, my individual story is a long one, I would say. So I'd have to pick and choose, really, kind of where we go. But
it's okay. I did that too. Go.
So I was born in England. You might be able to tell.
The accent, I think, gives it away. Yeah.
It's going away a little bit. Every time I speak to my mum on the phone, she's like, "You're sounding so American." Yeah, she's like, she just gets on to me about it. All my friends joke about it. They just can't. They can't. I'm genuinely petrified of losing my accent because I've heard people who've moved from England that have lived out in America for like 50 years, and it just sounds awful. It's like the worst hodgepodge of an accent you'll ever hear in your life. Like, they'll still say bath, but then use the like rhotic R. So they'll say like curb instead of curb, Okay. And it's just the worst. It makes I live in fear of that
daily
especially
fear.
Because my mum would be on to me all the time about it. And Emily would probably be upset as well, because I think half the reason she loves me is because of my accent.
Emily being your wife.
Exactly.
Yeah,
my mum has told me that if Emily and I ever have kids, God willing, she's going to try and drum their American accent out of them, because they're naturally going to have one, because we plan to stay in the United States. I love this country. So our kids are going to have a different accent to me. So my mum has already told me that she's going to come over and be like, "No, it's bath, not bath." So yes. Anyway, I grew up in England. I was born in Cambridge. Born at a hospital there. And my mum and dad. I'm the oldest child, oldest by 4 years. My younger sister Emily, spelled with a Y, not with an IE, like my wife. Funny story, like half of Emily and I's family have the same name.
Really?
Yeah. So my
Emily's
sister,
is IE.
Yeah. So my wife is IE. My Emily, my sister, is Y, and then both our dads are called Chris. It's a whole thing. And then like at the wedding, Emily had 3 bridesmaids called Elizabeth, and then I have 2 friends called Rob. But basically, everyone we know has the same name.
So y'all like to keep things. Just
similar. Keep it simple, so we can just say like pick from 10 names and one of them's going to be right.
you gotta have friends within this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I lived in a little village called Isleham, which is near the city of Ely. If you've ever heard of that, it's got a really beautiful cathedral there. I lived there until I was 6. I remember having pretty good memories of living there. It's in a very, very small village. Not really much goes on there other than, we lived in a really nice house that my dad still lives in. Across the road from there is the village green, where, once a year they'd have a fete, which is like sports and people would set up little stalls that had games for kids and had a little playground there for kids. It was a very, very small village. Maybe 1,000 people at the most, I would say. Yeah. Really small. You can walk around the whole village in 30 minutes. And so I lived there, had a happy childhood from what I can remember. And then all of a sudden, I have this very vivid memory of just like this 30-second period in my life where I was asleep in my bedroom one night, and then I wake up and my mum picks me up. She's like, we got to go. I'm like, okay. I mean, just woke up. It's probably like 2 a.m. at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, for all I know, it could have been like 10:30 at night. I was a kid, so anytime it's dark,
dark
was like,
dark.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just get put in the car, and then I fell back asleep. Woke up at this place I'd never been to in my life. I was like, where on earth are we? My sister was with me, who was 2 years old at the time. So obviously doesn't remember any of this. And I get walked into the kitchen by my mum and sit down at a table. Again, never been in this place in my entire life. And there's a man stood before me who, again, never seen. And I can just remember him trying really hard to form a connection with me immediately. He was trying to make me laugh, trying to make me smile, trying to make me feel comfortable, I imagine, was his goal. Because he knew that for a kid this was scary, and I didn't know what was going on. I was tired, so... and that was that. And later I found out that my mum had left my dad. They were then in a process of getting a divorce, but my mum had left my dad for this other man. His name was John, and he lived on a farm. It wasn't an operating farm at the time. It was just a farmhouse, really beautiful property, had a lot of land, really, really nice. And we stayed there for years. My mum and John had a relationship. They were never married, never engaged. They were just partners. My mum started a farm there, an operating farm. We had pigs, chickens, goats, sheep, the whole lot, and I took part in that as a kid. From the age of 6 until I was 12, I was there. 12 and like almost 13, we were there. And
so you did you helped out on the
every
farm
day,
and
man.
things?
Every day.
Yo.
Every day, to get up before school, go feed the lambs if we had lambs, because we would take so there was a guy who lived down the road from us who had a really big he was like a legit farmer, so he had like thousands of sheep and everything. And basically what happens is when a lamb's mother dies, very often the lamb will die as well, because no other sheep is going to take that lamb in. It's virtually impossible for a female sheep to take in a lamb that isn't hers. She won't feed it, so it will very often die. So what we did, we took those orphan lambs and we nurtured them and fed them and then grew them to be our own. And then we would, if they were, it varied, but more often than not, we would slaughter them and then use them for meat, sell the meat. We were operating with them. But when they were babies, we had to go and bottle feed them because they didn't have a mother. So we would have to get up really early. I'd hear them. They'd wake me up. Even though they were down the other end of the farm, they would just be screaming their heads off. So we'd have to go and feed them, which, is cute the first 2 times you do it. And then
That's
when you
annoying.
have to do it every single day, and then I'd have to go feed the pigs, water the pigs, do everything, muck them out, all before school. And then I'd go to school, went to a really cute little school in a little village called Eltersley, even smaller than Isleham, maybe had like 600 people in it, max. My school was years reception through year 6. Which is the age of 4 through the age of 11. I don't know what that is in America. I can't remember what that is, but it's reception year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6.
Sounds like preschool through like 6th grade.
Okay.
7th grade.
Right. So that entire school had 96 people in it.
That's small.
Yeah.
That's small, man.
So, it's from all that age group, everyone knew each other's names. I loved it there. Loved that school. Loved my life as a kid, had a really great childhood. Spent a lot of time outside, also had my video games, got a PS2 for the first time when I was like 7 years old, freaking changed my life.
That's what's up.
Yeah, man. The first game I ever played on that was Prince of Persia because it came in the box.
Did you have the Crash game?
Crash Bandicoot?
I think that's it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's
because
staple.
I had, but my first console was the PS2. Could have been a PS1. I don't really remember. But PS2 was the first one I really remember, like, spending all my free time on, basically. So, yeah, just, and, I loved video games kind of growing up like you. Used it to escape a lot because behind having a good schooling and having, a lot of adventure as a child, we also lived in a very abusive household. So John, who I haven't seen since maybe I was like 19 the last time I saw him, so about 7 years ago. He's a very abusive man, very, very short temper. Grew up believing that, children are seen but not heard. You only speak when you're spoken to. Very, very conservative, very strict, very old way of bringing up kids. And if we misbehaved, we would be disciplined. And sometimes that would just be verbal, but sometimes it would be physical, getting beat, and not just a little, it was a lot. And I think it happened to my mum as well. I didn't see all of it, but I know that some of it did, because it all came to a head one day when I had a friend over.
Oh, no.
Yeah, his name was Rory, and he was just over at my house. He came for a sleepover. And then we were downstairs one morning, and it was just the three of us. It was me, my sister, and Rory. And then all of a sudden, I could just hear my mum screaming upstairs. And she was like, call the police, call the police.
Oh, no, dude.
Yeah. And this was, a couple of times that like, stuff like this had happened, but this felt different to me. Even as a 12-year-old, I think I was 12. I was like, this is, it sounds funny, but in that moment, I was kind of both A, scared, but also B, relieved, because I knew that this would be a chance for my family to get out of this relationship, because we've been looking for a way out. And so the police came, took John away. He went to prison for a bit. We got a restraining order against the guy, and then for the following 3 or 4 years, so for the following 2 years, I think. It was just my mum and my sister and I. We moved to a little town called Rushden, and it was the three of us. Sorry, I was the man in the house, which was weird.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, one day I was at home, wasn't feeling very well, and I heard a knock at the door. I was like, okay, weird. Open the door, and John is there, and I'm like, what? I was terrified.
This was how many? 3 years?
2 years later. And I hadn't seen the guy since. I was very much under the assumption that he was out of our lives. He had a restraining order, everything. Turns out my mum had been seeing him again. Because this man was very charismatic. Very charismatic. Knew how to influence people. He was a salesman. So you can imagine. Guys claws back into my mum. They started a relationship again, and then essentially the same thing happened again, where he became abusive, broke into our house one night. I won't get into the massive stories. Maybe I'll tell it one day soon. But suffice to say, the exact same thing happened again. Ended up with me, my mum, and my sister again, which was what it wasn't ideal, but it was better than what we were going through. And then my mum eventually, a few years later, found she was working as a gardener. She loves to garden, and a guy who used to garden at the house next to her knew she was single and said, well, hey, my dad is single. You guys should go out on a date. And she was like, okay. Went out with this guy called Nigel. And I think it was less than a year later they were married. Amazing guy.
Yeah.
Brilliant for my mum. Very, very passive, very loving, but in a very reserved way, but also very caring. He's one of those people who cares a lot about the people he loves, but he will never tell you unless something... But he will defend you to the ends of the earth. If anything ever happened, you wouldn't want to get in this man's way. He's a big guy. Yeah. Big guy. You would not want to mess with him. And now my mum and him are happily married. They got their own house, got a little German Shepherd out in the countryside. Amazing life. And then in that time, I was at school. I didn't do so great at school. I just was playing video games, kind of just decided to... I was a smart guy in the sense that I could pass tests without really trying. If I tried, I could have done really well. But I never did until A-levels, which so in England... Without going too deep into it, you do your GCSEs, which is ages 15 and 16, which are, there's probably about 30 exams you do on all these different subjects. And then once you pass those, you get grades on results day where you go into school, you open up an envelope and it has your grades inside of it. everyone's there. And if you get the right grades, if you get good enough grades, you can go into sixth form, because compulsory education in England finishes at the age of 16. A-levels are ages 17 and 18, and if you want to go to university, you have to take A-levels. So I was under the assumption that I was going to go to university, so I went back to school to sixth form at Bedford Modern School. I love that school with all my heart. And I studied English literature, government and politics, film studies, and theatre studies. So very artistic, loved them all. Didn't like my teacher for English literature, but that's neither here nor there. She didn't like me either. Dude, one time she graded one of my exams purposefully badly. And this is like coursework. So this is like official, goes towards your end of year grade coursework. And I was like, I don't think it was this bad. I got regraded by a teacher who bumped me up 2 letter grades. I was like, okay.
What?
Yeah, it was bad, man. She didn't like me, I didn't like her, and everybody knew.
Can you get out of classes? Or was she?
No. So anyway, I did that, did my schooling, really loved it. And I knew I had known since the age of maybe like 13, 14, I wanted to do something artistic. I wanted to be an actor. That was my thing. I love to be on the stage. It's one of the places, it sounds so cliche, but I really just feel free when I'm on the stage, especially get really into the character, just forget about everything other than what's happening in that moment. And I always craved that feeling, and I could only ever find it on the stage. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do, man. I'm good at it. I can just really see myself doing it. So by the time I got to about 17, I was like, I'm not going to university. I want to go to drama school. Looked at all the drama schools, couldn't really figure out which one I wanted to go to. So I said, well, what I'll do is I'll finish school and just go work for a bit. Went and worked for a bit, and then I auditioned for a bunch of different schools. And I auditioned for one called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which was in LA. They have one in New York and they have one in LA. I auditioned for that. It was my favorite audition that I had. Got in. I was like, this is where I want to go. So I set my sights, set my goals to be, this is where I want to go. Worked for 2 more years after that to save up to go, because it was expensive. And in 2017, 2017, left to move to LA. A lot of my family did not like the idea, because I was moving across the country. Yeah. It's a lot. I'd never been to the school. I'd never even seen it. I just had blind faith, essentially. That was like, this is where I'm meant to be. Now I think I realize what it might have been that guided me in that direction. But at the time, I was like, well, I just have a feeling. Got there. I loved it. Loved every second of it. Made some amazing friends. But it's also where I met Emily. She was training at the same school as me. We were in the same year. I was never actually in any of her classes, but we got put on what was called an exam play together, where the exam play was at the end of the first year. The second year's put on a pretty much professional production to get graded on for their final grade, and the first years are stage managers. Emily and I were put on the same stage managing together, and we really hit it off, great friends. And just through our conversation, she told me she was a Christian, and I was at the time very not against, but I just really wasn't receptive to the idea of like God and Jesus and Christianity and all that kind of faith. I was like, it's not for me. I was someone who I listened to Marilyn Manson, Slipknot, Ghost. You basically name a like satanic band, I was listening to them. And not that I was like supportive of that ideology, but it's just the kind of music that I was enjoying. Yeah. I'd grown up listening to them and was still listening to them. And she told me that she was a Christian. I was like, okay, sure. And she was going to church there in LA, a place called Mosaic. And she'd invited me. I was like, sure, maybe I'll go one day. Never went. Emily and I were really hitting it off at this point. We knew we liked each other. And basically one day we were sat in her car and we professed our feelings for each other. And she got really upset because she told me, she was like, I can't date you. I was like, why not? She was like, I can't. She was like, I want to, but she said that she just could not, in good faith, date somebody who, in her words, didn't love Jesus as much as she did. Now, to somebody who is not Christian, that was like, whoa. That's really intense. Like, you're not even going to date somebody who's not a Christian? Like that to me, I was like, that's
It's like cultish almost.
exactly. I mean, like, if you're not a Christian, to hear those words, like, to hear somebody say that they love somebody who they'd never even met, you know, that's, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I mean, I respected her decision. I didn't push her into anything. And I was like, we kind of just went our separate ways. We didn't even talk for a good bit. And this is a period in my life that I'm not proud of. I was drinking a lot. I was partying a lot, spending a lot of time with girls, and just generally living how I shouldn't have been. And I suffered for it, where I got kicked out of housing. I was an RA at the time on campus, got kicked out of there, basically was essentially homeless in LA. Luckily, I had some amazing friends who put me up in their spare bedrooms or let me sleep on their floor, on their couch and everything. I will be thankful to them to the day I die.
Yeah.
For just putting me up, and even Emily's dad paid for hotels for me to stay in. And this was before we were just friends. And right before then, though, she had invited me to church around Christmas time, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go. It's Christmas. This is a good time to go, just to see, you know. And I went, and Erwin McManus was speaking, and he just did a sermon. Couldn't tell you what it was on, but I can tell you that it changed my life massively. I had been in and out of churches. I had been to Passion once with Emily, didn't really feel anything, felt a little bit of something, but I was like, yeah, whatever. Churches in England growing up, horrible experience every single time. Cold, damp, boring, old. You know, yeah. The congregation is like 85-year-old average. The sermons are on God knows what. You can't even hear them because it's so echoey. It sounds like I'm like, what are you saying, mate? And yeah, I was just in that moment, and I was like, I just felt something so deep within me that I'd never felt in my life. I was like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of refused to believe what I was experiencing was like Jesus. And so I spoke to Emily. I was like, is there anyone I can talk to? Because I actually messaged Erwin McManus at the time on Instagram, not knowing that he's like this like very popular preacher, and we won't get too much into that, but like he did not respond to me. Safe to say, he probably didn't even read my message. But Emily was like, well, hey, speak to this guy called John. He'll speak to you. So I messaged this guy called John, who was on staff at the same church. And he sat down with me for coffee one day and answered every single one of my questions. We were maybe there for like 2.5 hours. Answered every single one of my questions, and I got saved on that day. I gave my life to Christ, and I have not regretted it since. I regretted it in the immediate aftermath of that, because in those 2 weeks following, my whole life fell apart, which is when I got kicked out of housing. I lost my passport, lost everything. Like literally everything was just falling apart. I was like, looking to the heavens, like I just professed that like Jesus is Lord, and now my whole life is falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, that was tough. But man, it's been an amazing journey since then. And I know I'm very aware of the fact that I've been talking on and on and on. But
no, that's good though, because what I'm noticing in this, and you know, the way you just kind of articulated your story was in depth, so in depth that I like. There's things I didn't share that you and I would relate really well with, you know, toxic and chaotic homes, and meeting the loves of our life, very pivotal moments in our life, and then everything kind of falling apart after that. Those are very key elements that if you wouldn't have spent some time with, I would have never known. And I'm your co-host, so like,
well, there we go.
Yeah.
But that's why I really wanted to do this, man. Is because there are so many things that we don't know about each other. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Christian to Christian, like it's us, or whether it's people looking from the, you know, like I said earlier, from the outside looking in, they'll be like, oh, they're Christians, they think they're perfect.
Yeah.
They probably just have perfect lives. You know, they probably think they're just better than everyone else. It's so far from the truth.
Yep.
Like the whole, like it's part of the package when you come to church that you acknowledge that you are not perfect.
Yeah.
That's literally the point.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. The point is that, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are certainly people out there, like with anything, who will dispel that idea. There will certainly be people out there who think they're better than other people because they're Christians. Yeah. You know, Westboro Baptist Church, perfect example of that. But the reason I wanted to do this is because I want to try, at least, to be an example of, hey, I definitely don't have things all together. Never have. Never will. But there is someone who came into my life and has changed everything for me. Everything. And it doesn't mean that my life has been perfect since then, but it has been fundamentally different. I met Emily and got married to her in 2020. The guy who saved me married us, John. He married us. And Emily and I obviously don't have a perfect marriage. Nobody does.
Right.
But the foundation that we share together in Christ makes us infinitely stronger than we would be without it. And it just, being somebody who was never someone of faith and whose friends all in England are not people of faith, it makes me want to scream at them.
Yeah.
That like there's so many times where I just say to myself, God, if only they would just come to church with me, you know? And like, but it's so hard to like even just have that conversation with them, because most of the time I was where they was, where I was like, I don't even want to hear about this, you know?
Yeah. And you try your best to maybe pitch it, and that sounds bad, but like pitch it in a way that, oh, this would make sense. But then you come up with those, or you get hit with those moments where it's like, oh, that's exactly what, like you were just saying, like exactly what I would have been turned off about when I was in that area of my life. And so, but what's so unique and just incredible about your story was the very important intersections that you came to, where it's like a decision led to another decision, instead of, oh, I'm just going to LA and hoping for the best. Mm-hmm. Like you had this, oh no, this is where I need to go. You felt this something inside of you that said, no, go here, which led to other moments that now you're in West Georgia, and it makes zero sense why a guy from England is in West Georgia. But like to me it's so hard to deny, but that something was working there, and you know, you and I are going to call it God, but working in those moments to get you at these intersections. And but those intersections aren't always clear. They're not always like convincing, if you will. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not always where it's like, oh yeah, it's very clear that this road is wrong and that one's right, or vice versa, whatever it may be. Like, those are not,
especially in the moment.
Case. Yeah. Especially in the moment where it's, and so trying to, you know, get people to understand, or get someone to understand some of that, is incredibly difficult. And I think that's the beauty in it, though, is because if we as humans can articulate the vastness of what we're feeling, then I wouldn't want to worship that, or I wouldn't want to be a part of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, the infinite side of some of those depths of beauty and depths of joy and fulfillment need to stay infinite. They need to stay outside of our realm of understanding and how to articulate, because that's what drew me in the first place. So
the tough part is that as human beings, we want to know those things.
It's almost paradoxical that you want to know some of those things. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, sometimes you want to be there at that place, but then again, like, if you can, is it really worth being there?
Hey man, it comes back to why, you know, we all live in sin in the first place. God said, don't eat the apple, but they wanted to know.
It's a good looking apple.
Yeah. They were like, hey, I mean, it can't hurt that much to find out.
Yeah.
So since the beginning of time, human beings have wanted to know more and more and more. And if there's something they don't know, they want to know what it is. Mm-hmm. Perfect example of it. You know.
Yep. And, you know, you can think anything, like even the foundation of this podcast, the idea of like, you have these people who tell you you're supposed to do this, or you're supposed to do that, or in Christianity, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, or this is how you're supposed to act. And like, what if you could? Like, what if you could be perfect? Like, what then?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's like what people say, you know, when they're, I mean, obviously it doesn't equate, but it's like when people say, if all you strive for in life is money, then you're never, ever going to be fulfilled, because there's going to get a point where you already have everything, you know? Then what?
Yeah.
Like, you already, like, if you're a trillionaire, or like, if you're like Jeff Bezos, that guy just got divorced, you know? Tragically. But he's the richest man in the world, you know?
Yeah, how could he not make it work?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
there's things that, there's never going to be a point where you can fully have everything. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It really is. So if yeah, you're right. If you're going to be perfect, then what? You know?
And I think you add another level to that, and this will be important, I think, when we bring on guests and things, but like, to live in that alone is so detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, where you're alone, like, trying to live up to standards and even figure out what your own standards are, and what, you know, your passions are, and like what you want to do with your life is difficult alone, like just that. But then you add, like, if you're trying to figure it all out by yourself, or you're escaping all the time to the point where you do feel alone, maybe you're manufacturing community or relationships with people, but you're doing it as an escape. Like, video games could be a great example of that. Like, you could hop in there and play games for a little bit and think you're building friends, but in reality you're just escaping. And so like, it could be and those things they're not meant for those moments. It's not meant to be alone and to go through this. So it can be even more difficult to navigate all these expectations and live in this crazy kind of world filled with expectations, and especially to do it alone, which will be helpful when we bring on guests to hear, you know, you and I have never really heard each other's full stories, but there's elements that'll connect us. And so I have no doubt that whoever we bring on here will have elements in their story that are fundamentally similar to ours.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which will be great, because then you can find actual realities where, no, it may feel like a paradox sometimes that we're walking through, but we got somebody to walk with us and help us through it. So
yeah, absolutely. And it sounds weird to people who don't have that, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really is just like having somebody else you can just lean on any time of the day or night. Man, I thank you for sharing, Connor, your story, and
thanks for including me,
for
man.
talking with me. I really appreciate it. I really, really hope that we can get some cool people on. I know we know enough cool people.
We do.
And that have enough of a story that we could probably talk for like 6 hours with them.
Yeah.
But if anyone who has made it this far, thank you for listening. I know that I talked for a really long time, so sorry about that.
Good stuff. It was good stuff.
But thank you for being here with us and for listening. If you have any like feedback, I'm gonna post this as many places as I can. It's audio, so I mean I'll definitely throw it up on YouTube and as well, but then regular places I'll try and get it on there as well. If you have any feedback or any questions or any sort of want to talk to you about anything, then either like leave a comment on the various platforms. Most of the people who are probably going to be listening to this right away are going to know us anyway, so like you can message us or just find a way to reach out. Won't be hard.
Nope.
But yeah, thank you for everyone who's listened. We're going to do more. I would like to anyway.
Yep, there's going to be more.
Yeah. What are you doing for the rest of the day? Anything? Got any plans?
Not really.
No?
So, no, I'm going to play some games tonight.
What are you going to play?
Actually, we have life group tonight on Discord, so I'll do that and play games.
I haven't been able to jump in with that recently just because I haven't been feeling too well.
It's okay.
Is it going well?
Yeah, we're experimenting with... It's just different, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Discord life group is just different. Like it's more missional.
Mm-hmm.
So you got, like, our objective is to keep it like engaging for people who are in those like stages of life that you were just talking about. That, I mean, God's something, but like, is that relevant to my life? And so, how do you engage with people like that in honest like conversations without feeling judgmental or like feeling like you're pressuring and things? So it's different. It's weird, but it's going good.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for today. I'm excited to see what the score is in the Arsenal game.
Yep.
Then watch the Braves tonight. It's going to be a good night.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
I don't know what I'm having for dinner yet.
Mexican?
No. Maybe pasta. Pasta.
Pasta?
Pasta, yeah. I make like a nice tomato pasta sauce. It's good.
You do it like homemade?
Yeah. I mean, there's a really good...
Red sauce?
Yeah, I have a really good like pasta sauce recipe that is... I got it from somewhere. It's not my own. But it's just like canned tomatoes, peeled, like whole peeled tomatoes, whack them in a what are they called? Saucepan.
Yeah.
Whole onion.
Okay.
Butter. That's it. And then like salt and pepper. Trust me, it's delicious. And then you just mix it, let it boil down for a while, crush those tomatoes in there. It's just really, really delicious. Perfectly balanced. Get the acidity from the tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
You get that like more like richness from the butter. A little bit of like some in from the onion.
Something.
Yeah. And then you mix it with the pasta, Parmesan cheese. Done. Bingo
amazing.
bongo. It's like $1 per serving.
Yeah, that sounds
It's excellent.
amazing. I need to try that. I'm getting into some stuff like that, like homemade,
Yeah.
Pasta sauces and things that are better.
It's the way, because the jar is never as good.
It gets old, and it's like lacks creativity. Like I want to feel like Gordon Ramsay when I'm in my kitchen. You know what I'm saying?
Well, just don't cuss at Cass the whole time you're doing it, because
You're
like
an
that's
idiot
what
sandwich.
On that note, thank you again to everyone for listening, and we'll hopefully see you again soon with a secret guest.
A secret guest. We'll keep it a secret until the day of. That's right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.